Thank you, Bobby, for that introduction. As Bobby said, my name is Nicholas Jackson. I'm a senior consultant here at TrinSoft. You may know me from doing Business Central, but I also do quite a bit of Power BI work as well. I have found quite a few different features, some lesser known features of Power BI that are really powerful and really useful over my consulting experience. So wanted to share some of those with you guys today. So those 5 hidden gems, we are calling them, are query parameters, what if parameters, multiple pages on your model layout. Then that next one is constant lines on your line graphs, and the last one is going to be custom themes inside of Power BI. So before I start, if you are brand new to Power BI, you might be a little lost at some of the things that I am going through. I will assume that most people here do have a little bit of experience with Power BI and are somewhat familiar with the desktop version of Power BI. If you are not familiar with Power BI, we do have a couple webinars. Feel free to reach out and we can send you links to those. Or Microsoft has some great documentation on getting started with Power BI. So what we are going to be starting with here is a pretty basic report that I have built. This is based around sales data. It's a little bit older data, but it's perfectly fine for our use case. We're going to take a look at an executive sales summary, and then we're also going to run through some sales scenarios. So this is what we're going to start with. And then here's what we're going to finish with. So a couple of different things here. First, you'll notice, obviously, it has a theme, different color background, nice logo up here. And then we'll jump over to sales scenarios. This is where we can get really powerful with our what if parameters. So this is where we can adjust forecasts for price increases, demands and decreases, so on and so forth, and have those live reflected in the visuals. So first, I will drag this out of the way, and we will start here inside of this start version of the report that we have. So let me get you guys a little familiar with the data that we're working with here. So any good report is going to be have a good model as the backbone. So let's take a look at the model first. This one honestly isn't too complex. It's a really, really strong star schema. As you can see here, we've got the sales as really the heart of our report. So this is our fact table, and then we've got just a lot of dimension tables that go around it. We've got sales territories and order, resellers, dates, products, category or customers, categories, so on and so forth. I will note that we do have a few we have 1 active and 2 inactive relationships between sales and the date table. There's one measure that uses these inactive relationships, and I'll show that here in a little bit. But just want to give you guys an idea. This is pretty basic sales data. If we take a look at the actual data and take a look at sales, you'll see some pretty basic stuff. We've got an order date, quantity, price. You know, if you're familiar with lines and headers, this sales table is the lines, and then we would have sales order, which is going to be basically the header, so to speak. So we will mostly be working with the actual sales data. All right, the data source for this is simply just an Excel workbook. Again, Power BI beauty of it, one of the many beauties of Power BI is that we do have all of these different connectors for pulling data inside of Power BI. It's not just Excel workbooks, even though that's what most people go to as a default just because it's easy for webinars. But as you can see, this long list of different options for pulling data automatically inside of Power BI. So if you use any of these tools, you can out of the box connect and start pulling this data. If you don't see your piece of software listed here, feel free to reach out. We've written custom connectors for people, and that's something that we can do for you as well. But anyways, we've got an Excel workbook, and let me pull that open here. Excuse me, coming over a cold. All right. So this workbook is pretty simple. It's just going to break out our data into a couple of different pages and tables on each page. So got sales data, sales territory data. I'm not going to read all this data to you. It pretty much, we just have 1 table per table in our model. So pretty simple. All right, so enough background. Let's go into our hidden gems. So first hidden gem is going to be our query parameters. So query parameters are really, really powerful, not necessarily inside of Power BI, which they are, but this is actually a feature of Power Query. So if you're not familiar with Power Query, it is the ETL, or the extract, transfer, and load tool by Microsoft. It's used in Excel, and it's used in Power Query Online and a lot of different places. So to get to Power Query, we'll go to Transform Data and choose Transform Data here. Here on another screen, it will open up Power Query for us. Let me make this, there we go, that's a bit better. All right, so this is our data inside of Power Query. So we can go ahead and refresh the preview for all of these, and we can actually see, I've got this file open in another tab, sorry about that. Let's close out of that workbook, and let's try this again, and it should load this time. All right, great. So now we have all of our data being pulled into each one of these separate queries. So everything is good here. One potential issue that you just saw a preview of is dealing with local Excel files. If that Excel file gets deleted, or if that Excel file gets moved, then your reports will no longer work. So Power Query has it hard-coded where that file lives. So let me pull up, just as an example, what this file is. So if I come over here and bring this here, you can see here I've got the Gravity bicycle sales data. If anything happens to this, if I copy this, you know, for example, or if I cut this and move it up a folder directory, right, come back in here, this is where it was, and I try and refresh this, I'm getting an error because it says could not find this file because this is hard-coded. This is exactly where it's expecting to be. And it's not just this product categories table that's going to have issues. It's going to have all of these. So if I try and refresh the preview for all of these, you can see every single one of these is going to fail because I changed the location of this file. So it's not the end of the world if I have to change the file location. You know, it's something I can do. However, I would have to change it for every single one of those queries. So wouldn't it be nice if I could just store in one place the location of my file and a file path for my file, and then just use that in every single one of those queries? And the beauty is we can do just that. So this is the file path that I want to store as a parameter. So I'll take this and I will copy this. And to create a new parameter, we'll go up here to parameters and say new parameter. And I will give this parameter a name, and I will say source file path. Quick description will be file path of the source file. It is required. This will be a text, no suggested value, and the current value I will paste in that file path. So I'll hit OK. All right, and so now I've got a variable called source file path that I can use anywhere inside of Power Query. So let me go back up to my product categories. I need to go to the very first step. So over in my applied steps, the source step is really what drives the fetching of the data. So let me go to my source step. You can see here, my file path is hard coded. Let's remove this string and instead put in the source file path. You can see my autocomplete is working for me well here. I will hit enter, and now you can see there's my data. All right. So now I can come back here, and it is a little repetitive. You do have to come in here and you have to enter the variable names, source file path for each one of these. However, the beauty of this is you only ever have to do this once. Now you have a centralized location for all of your queries to be built off of. And so if this file path ever changes, or even if you take this and host it up in OneDrive or some other shared location, you will have one parameter down here in your source file path that you'll have to change. So this is really nice, especially if you're doing other things. You know, I've used this in a scenario where I have I built some template reports for people, and let's say they have a different environment that they want to build a report to. So they want to say, you know, they want to change it ad hoc. They want to say, okay, yes, this is pointing at Sandbox, but, you know, another copy of the report might need to look at the production environment, and that's just a simple URL change. So that's one other example of how I've used this source file path previously. So if this ever changes, we can just come in here, change the file path, and refresh it, and everything will be pulled in. All right, so we will hit close and apply. Minimize this, and it will go out and it will refresh all of our data. And you'll be able to see it is successfully pulling our data. All right, and then there is one other way that you can edit these parameters. You can actually edit these parameters from inside of Power BI and not even need to dip into Power Query. So you can come in here to transform data, and you can choose edit parameters. And so here we've got our source file path, the one that we just created in Power Query. We can change it here if need be. All right, so that is query parameters inside of Power BI or Power Query. Next up, we have what if parameters. Those may sound very similar to our query parameters, but they actually have a pretty distinct difference. Query parameters are a Power Query feature, whereas what if parameters are a Power BI feature. So a what if parameter is pretty well explained. It lets you examine what if scenarios. So a very common scenario for this is going to be a sales scenario. Let's say you want to be able to interact with your data and you want to be able to adjust certain values. Then a what if parameter is going to be great for this. So again, let me dip over to our finished copy and I'll show you what that looks like over here real quick. So in this example, we have two what if parameters, one that's called price increase and one that's called demand decrease. So this is nice because we have two levers that we can use to forecast our data. One based upon the price increase. So if we did a price increase across the board of 14%. And then obviously we can't just raise prices without having some adverse effect in our demand. So we want to be able to adjust the demand associated with this. And we want to get the actual forecasted difference. If we were to increase prices by 14%, we would still get $5,900 in revenue or $5.9 million in revenue. All right. So let's run through this real quick and I will show you how this is built. So first thing that we need to do, I've got some skeleton pieces here. As you can see, this is information that we filled in later. We've got a basic slicer up here for fiscal year. And then we've got sales by region across the charts here. All right. To create a what if parameter, we go up to the modeling tab up here and we want to create a new parameter. And this is a new what if parameter. So this is, again, well explained. It says, what if prices increased or what if demand decreased? And so now we have the capabilities to do that measurement here. So first one that we are going to create is going to be called our price increase percentage. All right, this is going to be a decimal. The minimum is 0. The maximum is 1 because again, we're looking at percentages and we want to increment it by 0.01 and we will say the default is 0. All right. We don't need to add a slicer. We've already got a spot for the slicer and we'll say, okay. All right. And a couple things happen when we do that. Main thing that you will notice is if we come over here to our field section, you will now see a price increase, section in our fields, just like it'll show up just like any other query in Power BI. So first we have a what if parameter called price increase percentage, and then we actually have the value for that, which is a measure listed here. All right, so we can select this slicer, and you can see here it's a type slicer, and we want to put in the price increase listed here. All right, so now we've got just a basic slicer that lets us adjust the adjust the price increase percentage, and we can also type it in here if we want it. All right. So we'll also I'll select this value real quick and change this to a percentage. And I will remove the 2 decimal places after. All right. And I'll also do it to this label as well. Percentage. And 0 decimal points after it. All right, so that is our price increase. Next thing that we need to do is we need to create one for our demand decrease. All right, so we will go back to our modeling tab, choose new parameter, say we'll call this one demand decrease percentage. This again is going to be a decimal number, minimum of 0, maximum of 1, increment of 0.01, and a default of 0. Don't need a slicer, we've already got one. And so we'll come over here to this slicer that I already have in the page, and we'll open up demand decrease and add that in there. All right. So we will select this one and change this one to a percentage as well. All right, so let me walk through a little bit in terms of what we are going to be doing with these. So as you can see, nothing really changes. When I adjust these, I can adjust these all day long to my heart's content, but nothing is going to happen with these values simply because I'm not using them anywhere. I'm not selecting them. I'm not including them in measures. I'm not doing anything like that. So what we need to do is we need to create a measure that takes these into consideration. So we need to think about, okay, how is this going to apply to our sales data? So a price increase is going to obviously affect price, but a demand decrease isn't going to affect price as well. A demand decrease is actually going to impact quantity. So if we come over and take a look at our data and we see our sales, we've got an order quantity and a unit price. So those are our 2 fields that we care about, right? So the order quantity is going to be decreased by the demand decrease, and then the unit price is going to be obviously increased. So let us create a quick measure on this that will display exactly how much is going to be impacted by this parameter. So let's create a new measure in the sales table. Give it a second here. I will call this one, you can see we've got a lot of sales amounts over here already. I will call this sales amount with parameters. All right, and so this is going to be equal to, let's look up this real quick. So essentially what we want to do is we want to take a sum, but we actually want to do a sum x because we want to sum rows on a table. So first, the table that we are going to select is the sales table, right? That's the one that we care about. So first thing that we need to do is we need to take the price increase into consideration. So we need to take a look at the order quantity and, oops, sorry, we want to take a look at the price first. We want to take a look at the unit price, right? And we want to multiply that by 1 plus our price increase percentage value. So I'll pause right here for a second. What we are doing is we want to sum up records on the sales table, but we want to do a little bit of math on this first. So we want to take the unit price, multiply it by 1 plus the increase percentage in value, right? We have to do 1 plus because otherwise this would be a decrease, right? So if we're increasing it by 57%, it's actually multiplying it by 1.57. All right. So that is the logic for the unit price. Then we also want to take it and multiply it by, or we want to take the price and multiply it by the quantity, right? But we need to adjust the order quantity first by taking it and multiplying it by, in this case, it's slightly different. It's actually going to be 1 minus the demand decrease percentage value. All right. And then we've got a couple parentheses to close there. Okay. So let me format this real quick. So we've got a sum X on the sales table. First thing that we are going to sum is the unit price times 1 plus the price increase percentage value, right? And we're going to take that and multiply it by our adjusted order quantity here. All right, so maybe let's do this. We'll do this, and then we'll do this, just so it flows a bit better. All right, so this line right here, again, is taking our unit price and multiplying it by our price adjustment value. And then this line here is taking our order quantity and multiplying it by our factor of decreased value. Okay. All right, let's hit enter. And we have our new measure over here, sales amount with parameters. So the beauty of these what if parameters is that they show up just like any other measure inside of Power BI. So we can use these in any other measure that we want, just like a measure, which is really handy and really powerful. All right, so let's go in here. And so right now we've got a sales amount in here, which is simply just the sum of the sales amount table, right? That's easy. Let's also add our sales amount with parameters here. And as you can see, we are getting different values. So we can decrease the demand, right? And we should, or the demand decrease, right? And you can see our projected revenue is much higher. But if we dip the price, that's also going to bring down the projected sales revenue, right? So this is really powerful. This will let you adjust each one of these independently and do some different forecasting scenarios. All right, so one other thing that's nice, it might be nice to just show, here's a basic sales amount. Next, it might be nice to say, all right, here is the sales amount with parameters. So this is with these adjusted in it. And then lastly over here, it might be nice to see, okay, what's the projected difference? Based upon this right here, what is the projected difference? We can create another quick measure for that. So we'll go to sales new measure. And we will call this one sales amount, parameter difference. And we will simply just take the sales amount with parameters and subtract from it the sales amount sum. So this is the sum is our original amount. And the one with parameters is the one that takes these into consideration. Okay. So I'll add that in here. And as you can see, if we were to increase prices by 7% and demand would go down by 24%, that would result in a loss of 20 million. So probably not the best idea. But let's format this up real quick. Let's do call out value. We don't need any decimal places here. That should be fine. And then one thing, just another quick little tip, we can actually do some conditional formatting on this. So one thing that could be nice is if we did an effect, we turned on the background, and we wanted to do, let's say if this was negative, put it a little red. If it's positive, make it a little blue or something like that. I've actually got this formula in here already, which basically just says, all right, if the sales amount is greater than 0 and less than or equal to the max value, then make it this light blue. Otherwise, shade it this light red. So as you can see, as we adjust these, the value will change and the background color will slightly adjust on this over here. Okay. Alrighty. So one other thing that I want to show you about these what if parameters, I don't have the time to go through actually stepping through this and showing you how to create them. But one thing that you can do is you can create bookmarks associated with these. So jumping ahead, I've got these three little buttons over here that kind of are preset scenarios. So if you click this, you can see it automatically adjusts your price and your demand up here for these different scenarios. So you can set these to whatever you want, but these buttons will go back and set it to a predetermined default. So the way that these work, these are actually buttons. So if you go to insert and buttons, you can choose which button you want to add. And then on the button itself, there's an option over here for action. So basically what happens when the user clicks the button? Well, in this case, we want to change the bookmark. If you're not familiar with bookmarks, here's another hidden gem of Power BI, and you get 6 for the price of 5. There is a nice pane over here called bookmarks. So bookmarks are a really nice way of setting different parameter values and saving them. So for example, here I've got one called price increase of 6% and a demand decrease of 2%, right? And I've got a couple of different values saved here as bookmarks. So all it's doing is adjusting the slicers that I set on this page. So I can set these as bookmarks. And then on this button over here, I can say when it's clicked, go to a specific bookmark. So when this is clicked over here, you can see it adjusts these and it selects my bookmark over here. So again, bookmarks super powerful. You can create these. End users can actually create these themselves inside of the Power BI service. So a really great tool to save a couple of different views. All right. So this is just a neat way of having some kind of predetermined and kind of stock sales scenarios for people to get an idea. All right, so next up we have multi-page relationship views. So this is a feature that is nice if you have a very complex model. So let's jump back over here to our starter example, and we will come over here to the model. So taking a look at this model, in all honesty, this isn't too complex of a model. Now, if you're a beginner with Power BI, you may recognize or you may be shocked by that, but this is actually a pretty simple model. Many models can have dozens, if not hundreds of pages and tables associated with them. So as you can imagine, it can quickly grow out of control and be very, very difficult to manage. One thing that Power BI has done to combat this is letting you create separate views inside of these model pages. So in case you've ever wondered what this multiple pages is down here. So again, in reports, we have multiple pages. This is pretty standard, right? But inside of the model, it's interesting that we have options as well. So if we create a new one here, you can see here, this is a new layout. So it says set up your layout, and it just says drag some tables to the canvas and we'll add them to your layout, or it can automatically do it for us. So let's say I just want to know a little bit more about the product table. So this is one feature. It has a bit of a snowflake pattern, right? Because we've got some drilling down here. You know, it's not just one entry off of the sales table. It's a bit of a snowflake. So let's just ignore everything else here and just take a look at the product. So, excuse me, come over here. Let's rename this layout to product. All right, and then let's just do what it says. It says drag tables to the canvas, and the canvas that, or the, the query that we really care about is the product. So take this, drag it over here, and there we go. That's our product. This is nice, but I don't just want to look at the product in isolation. You can see there's a lot of other tables that are related to this product table, and I don't want to add those one by one. So Power BI was nice enough to include a method. If we right click this one, the very first option here is called add related tables. Click that. And as we can see here, it automatically looks at our model and sees the associated tables with this one product table. So it is very, very powerful in terms of creating separate views of your model. Now, one big caveat I have to mention with this is that a lot of people think these separate pages are separate models. They are not. You can only have one model per Power BI file. So this is simply a separate view on the Power BI model. Okay. So if I make changes here on this product view, it is going to make a change back here over at the all tables view. All right. So that's a quick one, but that's a pretty nifty one, especially as you deal with bigger Power BI models and you deal with bigger files, trying to keep them all organized. That's a really, really powerful and nice view. or a nice option for you. Okay. Next up, let us do a constant line on this line graph that we have here. So we've got a simple line graph that just shows sales amount and sales amount by due date by month over time. Pretty simple line graph, nothing too fancy going on. One thing that would be nice to include would be the ability to have some horizontal lines going across it. So, for example, let's say that we wanted to see 2018 and 2019 monthly averages going across here. So, as you look at 2018 or 2019 or 2020, we might want to compare it back to a specific year. So, 2018, for example. Now, to do this, we can select this line graph here, and we can come over here, add further analysis to this visual. Not many people use this section over here, but it's pretty powerful. We can have an x-axis constant line if you just want a vertical line, but in this case, we want a y-axis constant line. So what we want to do is we want to add a line, and by default, it calls it the y-axis constant line. Let's rename this and give it a little bit better description, and we will say 2018 sales AVG for average. All right, so then for the line, it's going to ask for a value. We could put 2 million in here, right? And you can see, let's change this color so it's a bit more visible. All right, so you can see it does create a horizontal line here, and that's great. But we want something a bit more dynamic than that, right? So again, this is a constant line. We don't want a trend line or anything else like that. We would have to add a separate measure for that. What we want to do though is we want to include the sales average for 2018. So I've got a nice measure over here called sales amount fiscal year 2018. So that's great. Let's set a formula for this. We will say it is on sales, and we've got sales amount fiscal year 2018. Hit OK. And well, you can see that it added this line all the way at the top, and that is because at this level, we are looking at a month-to-month average, whereas this line is a total years. So we are comparing years up here to months down here, and that's not what we're looking for. So instead, we just need to create a simple measure that takes that annual average and splits it out into months. So we've already got one over here. I created it ahead of time just to save some time. It's a very simple one. Sales amount for the 2018 monthly average is simply just the sales amount for the fiscal year 2018 divided by 12. That's really all that we need, because we just want a horizontal line, which is just going to be one number. And so we can create a really simple measure to do that. So let's jump back in here. And instead of using sales amount fiscal year 2018, we will go to sales and choose sales amount 2018 monthly average instead. And there we go. That's a bit better looking line. So if we select 2018, we can see and take a look. Yep, that looks pretty close to an average line for us. So that's good. But let's add another line to this and include the 2019 sales average. So I will name this 2019 sales average. Value for this is going to be, again, very similar measure. So I will say sales, go to 2019 monthly average, hit OK. All right, we'll set this one to black as well, dashed it in front. All right, and then we can also add a data label. So this is nice. Instead of just throwing this line on here, it'd be nice to say a little description of what that line does or what it represents. So we will open up the data label. Let's put it on the right. For this one, I do want it above. I want the color to be black, and I want it to include the name, not the data value. All right, so that says 2019 sales average. Let's go up here, choose the 2018 sales average, turn on the data label. This one will be right as well. This one will be black. Let's actually put this one under so we can kind of sandwich it, and we will select the name. 2018 sales average, 2019 sales average. All right, and we can include 2020 if we wanted. I just thought it would get a little busy maybe if we were taking a look at all three of those. But if we take a look at fiscal year 2020, we can see every single month we beat the 2018 and 2019 sales averages. All right. The other nice thing about using a measure here is that these measures actually reflect any other filters that we set, not just fiscal year. So if we come over here and we want to look at just the sales for bikes, if we select the bikes column, you can see here it actually moves associated with the filters that we have. So if we want to look at the 2020 sales average for clothing, you can see here, you know, for 2018, the average is real low, but then it spikes up in 2019 because there's a big jump here. And so these just reflect the active filters that you have selected. And then same here with regions. If you want to look at the sales average for regions, you can do that by selecting these. Okay. So those are horizontal lines. Those are just nice to have. You don't need to include them on all the line graphs, but again, one of the hidden gems you can use as you see fit. All right. And last but not least, custom theming. This is the last hidden gem that we are going to cover. Excuse me. What we're looking at here is a standard theme or template out of the box for Power BI. It's not bad, but at the same time, it's not great. So a couple of issues. One, it doesn't have our logo. It'd be great if we had our logo on this. It doesn't have our color scheme, and it's just missing a few little details associated. It just really make the fit and finish for us. So first thing I want to do is import the logo. That's a really simple one. I want the logo to go right up here. So let me just move some stuff out of the way, and I will go to Insert and Image, and then it'll ask me for an image here. Gravity Bicycles is the name of my company. So here we go. Got my logo, upper left-hand corner. Beautiful. It's in all my reports, or it's in this report now. I can copy this, come over here to my sales scenario, and let's shrink this, maybe move this down a little bit, and paste this in here. All right, and I've got my logo in here again. Great. This is good, but it would be nice if I had some, this is a nice start. Again, I've got my logo. That's great. But it would be nicer if I had a few more things, you know, actual color scheme, the background colors, so on and so forth. So let us take a look at that. In order to do that, we will go to the View tab. This is the theme section, so you can click different themes here. These are just the default ones that you can use, but you can also customize your theme by clicking the down arrow here, and you can browse for some themes, take a look at the theme gallery, or customize your current theme, which is what we are going to do in this scenario. So what we want to do is we have lots of different options for various colors. So first of all, let's give our theme a name, and we will call this Gravity Bicycles for Webinar. Great. And this is where I want to start including some of my custom colors. So let's say, a lot of people ask, okay, how do I find my custom colors? How do I know what my colors are associated with my company? You may know what they are, but these most likely will come from your marketing department. If you ask them, they will be able to tell you what these custom colors are. So odds are you'll have some list that has a sample of each one of your colors. And a lot of times it will be represented with a 6-letter numbers and digits. This is called a hex code. If you take that and you paste it in here or type it in here, that is a unique representation for a given color. So that's a pretty easy way to transfer a color from your design sheet into Power BI. All right, so then we can come in here, choose a secondary color. All of these colors, they're used in different parts of the application. You can set them if you want. A lot of these aren't going to end up being used just because you're never going to need something that far down the road. All right, text, we can change the default font. So let's say we want trebuchet for this. Cards and KPI, we do want to keep DIN. That's great. For visuals, by default, we want to have a white background, transparency, header, so on and so forth. And then the wallpaper and page background. This is probably the one that's going to make the most difference. So in this case, we want that yellow that was from our logo. And let me copy this over here. And that is the yellow from our logo. So that is what we want for that, and we will say our page background transparency is 0, and we'll hit apply. Now, odds are there's quite a few different things here. You can see the background for all of our visuals is white. We want it to be transparent instead. So we can come in here, customize the current theme, look at the visuals, and we can say, oh yeah, we need to turn up the transparency on the background for our visuals, hit apply, and now you can see it has a transparent background. So we can come through here, edit each one of these as we want, go to customize current theme and set that there. It is kind of a hit and miss process. You know, it's a lot of trial and error, you know, trying to get something that matches. You know, obviously this purple is probably a bit bright and probably not one of your custom colors. And then taking over a look at the sales scenario, you know, there's certain visuals that you're going to have to adjust manually with the color. But that's all right. So once you have a theme, that you like, and you don't want to recreate it for every report. So let's say you've got another report on purchasing that you want to use this theme for. You can take this and you can save the current theme. So what it does, we can call this Gravity Bicycles theme for webinar, right? And it saves that as the file. So then we come into another report later and we choose Browse for Themes. And we can choose this theme that we just created, and it'll automatically apply it to business or to Power BI for us. So just again, to show you the example of the finished copy, once you get comfortable with this and play around with it a bit, you can see this is an example of one that I came up with. Again, just adjusting a lot of the colors. It's an art. It truly is. People ask how to get good at this, and really you just do it. Do it a lot, design a lot of reports. That's the same with Power BI across the board. It's just practice, practice, practice. So anyways, that is our 5 hidden gems, 6 if you include the bookmarks. So thank you guys again for your time, for giving me a little bit of opportunity to share some of these hidden gems with you. Thank you guys for your questions as well. And Bobby, I'll turn it back to you.